Good. Welcome, everybody, to the first webinar from Treasury Masterminds. I'm really pleased to be here with myself and this really great panel. My name is Patrick Kunz. I'm founder of Treasury Masterminds in this role, and I'm owner of Pecunia Treasury and Finance. So I know a fair bit about Treasury, and yes, this webinar, we're here to talk about the survey results of the AI in Treasury survey, which we did a few months ago, where we got a lot of respondents, a lot of interesting answers. I don't want to take too much answers already because Eleanor will tell me off. That's her bit. But for the next hour, we'll be talking about AI in Treasury, what the effects will be, the threats, the opportunities, several use cases, and brainstorm a little bit about the future, where we will go with AI. So much about me. If you have questions, on the right-hand side, there's the possibility to put questions in there. Feel free to post them whenever you want to. We will read them. We will try to answer them as much as possible, given what we're already talking about. And yeah, thanks for joining. And off we go. Eleanor, can I give you the floor to introduce yourself?
Of course. So some of you will know me from my previous role at TMI, and I left at the end of August. So I'm now running my own Treasury content creation company called Treasury Storyteller, and looking to shake up the way things have been done in the past and bring some fresh ideas and formats to the Treasury space, which was partly how we came to do this survey together. And I'll just give you a couple of really quick stats, top line stats about the survey before we begin. So we had 117 respondents across the globe. We conducted it in August for 2 weeks, so lots of you were on holiday, so apologies to anyone who didn't get to contribute, but we will definitely do it on an ongoing basis, so there'll be more opportunities. And we had, unsurprisingly, quite a lot of respondents from Europe, so 56%, 16% from North America, 10% UK, and then others from around the world. And I just want to take a moment up front just to say thank you ever so much to everyone who took the time to fill in the survey and to be here today, and we greatly appreciate it. So James, over to you.
James, you're on mute.
I'm clearly incapable of using technology, but so I'm James Kelly. So I'm Treasurer of Pearson at the moment. I've also, with Dominic, set up a business called Your Treasury, which is designed to help coach people on how to use technology and how to get the best of things like AI. Big AI enthusiast, have used machine learning for a number of years, along with lots of other tools. And I love AI's capability to help creativity and content creation and other pieces. So yeah.
Awesome. Dom?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dominic Lynch, and yes, together, as James mentioned, I co-founded Your Treasury as our way of bridging the leap into artificial intelligence in meaningful ways for treasurers and how they can bring these results into the workplace. My background is I'm currently a group treasurer of a broker called Xfinity, and I've been in the treasury space for the last 10 years.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So Patrick and I are going to be fighting it out for the floor today. So we're going to be co-hosting, which hopefully will give you a bit of a new dynamic to the webinar. And we're going to run through some use cases. We'll look at threats and opportunities around AI, and we'll also look at the future of AI. And as Patrick said, feel free to ask your questions. You know, it's a really good opportunity for you to pick the brains of these guys who are using AI. All your questions are welcome, and we'll come to as many as we can. But Patrick, I'll hand back to you for now.
Yes, I already said the question functionality is on the right. It's in the chat box. Feel free to ask as much questions as you like. Not sure if we can handle them all. For the technical bits, I refer to James and Dominic anyway. They are our AI gurus. Yeah, for the rest, let's have a great session here and see how it goes.
Awesome.
So Let me start with the first question. Let me ask you, Eleanor, on the survey results, how is AI currently being used by the respondents? We had 117 people. That should be a fairly big respondent to see, okay, it's used for this. Let's see.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I've been like in the weeds of this survey for a good couple of weeks now, and I promise we are getting the report ready for you, so you'll be able to see everything. There'll be a proper wrap up of all of the good stuff coming out of it, but I'll give you some highlights today. So we asked people where they're using AI, all sorts of AI. So AI is an umbrella term here, but encompassing machine learning, etc., etc. So we had 6 use cases that we were asking across. So forecasting and analytics, automating FX hedging, fraud detection and prevention, regulatory compliance, risk management, and automated reporting. And there's some very interesting stats. So there's sort of actually reasonable usage already of AI. So 15% already using it for forecasting and analytics, 34% for the automating FX hedging, 14% for fraud detection and prevention, 5% on regulatory compliance, and also 5% on risk management, and 16% on automated reporting. But one of the things that stood out to me was we also asked people where they had like no plans to use AI, and like 71% said no plans to use AI on regulatory compliance, which was quite interesting, and 52% no intention to use it around risk management. So it's positive to see that there are people using it, and it's going on, and there's people thinking about implementing it in the next 12 months. But I think there's also a lot of maybe not necessarily resistance around AI, but people don't necessarily understand quite how it can help them to the full extent. And there's just a couple of other little use cases that came out in the freeform comments, which was someone was using AI for banking format conversion. Someone also mentioned Gen AI to create skeleton docs, and then bank recs. So there you go. It's hopefully given you a bit of an overview. But off the back of that, I would love to hear from James and Dominic, because you're seeing these use cases. You've put AI to use yourself. So are you surprised by those stats around where AI is already being used, which is positive, but also some of those around where I said it's not being used as much, like the regulatory compliance? What are your thoughts around that, James?
So I think the most surprising one in a sense is the fraud one, because it's a really, really easy use case for AI, and it's quite difficult to do without AI, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I suspect that if we were to ask a follow-up question and say, of the people who aren't using AI, who's got any kind of fraud tool or monitoring, I suspect that they're probably, it's probably not that everyone else has got something in place and they're not using AI through it.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting one. Partly because the nice thing about using AI there is that, generally speaking, if you're using bank technology, they're able to ring people and say, we think there's a fraud. Yes, no. Is it genuine? And constantly update the models. So that's a nice kind of use case for shared models. I think on the regulatory side, I think there's an intersection where, we know that take up of things like Copilot is not that high, although usage of ChatGPT is high in the consumer space. In the enterprise space, the take up isn't that high, and therefore for a lot of treasurers, it's quite difficult to find a way of using Gen AI that kind of doesn't fall foul of data privacy concerns or that kind of thing. That we're getting past that reasonably quickly, and we're also reaching a tipping point where the range of use cases is quite significant, which then means that I think we'll see over the course of the next kind of 12-18 months that those percentages significantly increase. That we go from kind of single digits up towards probably 40 or 50%, because actually if it comes pre-installed on your computer, or it's kind of they're available from your IT department, and it's one of those things that, generally speaking, people who use these tools after a while go, oh well, it's just like using Google. It's really quite straightforward. I can kind of go, okay, I'll ask for, upload my treasury policies and go suggest some improvements, and it gives me 5 things. Great, that's easier. It's a boring task that you don't have to worry about so much. Or loan documents, all that kind of thing. You can move beyond the world of mail merge and standard document to kind of go, okay, right, suggest an edit for this different territory, and off you go. So I think in the regulatory space, there's quite a lot of low-hanging fruit. The barrier really is just getting people access to the tools.
Yeah.
When you get onto the machine learning, I think one of the really interesting things is that you've got at 15%, you've got quite a high proportion of people who are using quite an advanced use case. So you look at some of the simpler use cases and say, well, actually, there's a lot of room to kind of infill here, and for quite a large proportion of treasurers to take advantage of that.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of potential. And like you say, I think we will definitely see those numbers nudge up, but also hopefully some more creative use cases coming out. And Dominic, I'd love to ask you a little bit about that. What do you think the art of the possible is here? Can you maybe share some examples? I know the audience are really keen to hear some more practical use cases. Anything you've done in your workplace or anything you're doing at your treasury that you can share with the audience?
Let's say a practical, simple use case. I think the easiest one is the visualization journey that we can do with data on this side. I guess going back to Gen AI itself, I think just to also reiterate what James mentioned as well, like the banks are the easiest access to us going into the AI space in this side, and really it's about the whole of the IT. The company IT infrastructure actually moving forward with you to give you access for these potential meaningful moments in regulatory data. Onto the meaningful part of creative ideas. James, would you mind just helping me out for a moment? My mind has gone blank for the moment.
Okay, that's fine. So a good example would be with the ISO change on payment files. There's going to be a lot of payment files that will need updating to new standards. The reality is it's much more efficient from a kind of network perspective that we build tools that people share, and that then can do, if let's say you're translating an HSBC Euro file to the new standard, then that you're able to leverage commonly available tools to take MT940s and it's one of those things that I know a couple of the TMS companies are doing that. I know some of the banks are doing that, so that effectively you have a translation engine that you can upload a file into. It will then give you what the new payment format is, and effectively how to configure that in your system, so that it's super easy and we don't have to all get thousands of consultants in. That's quite a nice live example. If you look at something like the LIBOR transition, I'm sure any lawyers need to kind of cover their ears for this, but whereas we all had to go out and employ lawyers and pay very large amounts of money to effectively make relatively small documentation change, again, that's one that, the creation of a Treasury LLM chatbot that knows a few standard clause changes that need to be made, that's a really easy one. And again, I've seen suppliers who were looking at that in the kind of legal and compliance space, so that for a few £100 you can make the changes that previously took several £1,000s. So there's lots of kind of really good examples where you can use network effects that come externally. And then if you look at kind of internal pieces, one of the great things that I really like is that although it's really important to have data in good shape, etc., AI can be really good at helping you reformat your data or plug data gaps, etc. And so it doesn't have to be I can't use AI until everything's perfect. You can use AI to help you take the first step, and then you can use it to help you take the next step, and then you can iteratively get to where you want to get to. And that can be in the form of helping you to write code. That can be in the form of analyzing gaps in your data. That can be in the form of helping create database designs. There's all sorts of pieces that it can really accelerate.
Yeah.
If I look at the journey that I've been on at Pearson, the equivalent journey that we're doing now, admittedly it's easier a second time, but doing the equivalent journey at your Treasury is taking 20% of the time. And a big part of that is because we're able to leverage so many tools. So yeah.
Awesome.
I think that's also the answer. There's an audience question. Why is that percentage of I don't want to use AI for this so high? And probably it is what you say, James, because we're asking it for the ultimate solution. Automate my reporting, do my risk management, or snap my fingers and be my treasurer.
I think
I like how you split it up in bite-sized pieces, because if you say AI in Treasury, maybe we have to answer the question first. What is AI in Treasury? What can it do? And then we're here for the next 3 hours, because we can talk about AI and cash flow forecasting, which is one session. For risk, for each of the topics we mentioned in the survey, this could be a topic as a whole. So maybe AI in Treasury is a too broad topic anyway, like it was before, RPA, machine learning anyway. It's a question for later, I get that, but
I think there's a little bit of a risk that we've ended up in a bit of a Treasury echo chamber, where a few people talk prominently about AI and cash forecasting, and I've done exactly the same. So, and the reality is that if you go back 3 years, it was probably the most well-established use case. I think that's kind of turned on its head over the last 2 or 3 years. And so what you end up with is a situation where the use cases that are talked about kind of end up being the same use cases every time. So then a survey comes out and people are asked, what do you know about? And the answer is they know about the things that people have told them about. So I think part of the fun is kind of going out and going, okay, we do an exercise where we get people to create a logo using Ideogram or using the ChatGPT design tools and things, just to kind of go, look, there are other things out there. There's all sorts of exciting things that you can play with. And I think the more that people experiment, and not in a kind of big, I'm going to spend £10 million way, but actually just going out and trying a few little tools.
Yeah.
And going, okay, well, actually, is there something that could help me manage my calendar a bit better? Or like, what should we be using for note taking? Or there's lots of like really little use cases that are really handy, and that start getting you into that dynamic where you're working in partnership with the technology.
And thinking
baby steps. I think baby steps. Sorry, Eleanor. You do not know what you do not know. So maybe, Eleanor, we have to do this survey every year. Maybe not in August. Maybe in September.
Maybe. But there were some
comparing.
interesting bits coming out in terms of, we asked people about what their ultimate vision was for AI in Treasury, and a lot of this of what James just said there came out. So there were a lot of people saying, oh, I want cash flow forecasting sorted, I want an invisible treasurer. But there were some people who, from what they filled in for the rest of the survey, I could see that they'd used a lot of AI themselves, and they were a lot more creative. Like we discussed between us the one about walking through my cash vaults virtually, and I can see where everything is, and it's an entirely kind of different way of using these tools. So a lot of this will come out in the in the survey report. But I think it's difficult for people to, like you say, to visualize what the future could be at the moment, and it's important to start experimenting with those tools and see what the art of the possible is, even in just a tiny way. Even if it's just in your personal life, then it gives you some ideas to take forward into work.
I think it's worth sort of flagging as well, and I think this, to answer one of the questions in the chat, why are half of treasurers not looking to use AI? And I think that kind of comes down to a couple of things. One is around time available. We're all just really busy, and so actually until someone comes up with a concrete use case that people go, okay, that's going to save me time and it's worth me investing effort into. That's part of it. But then I also think that culturally, the visions of that some people have described of like fully automated treasury with no people in it, and that's not an image that a lot of people want to sign up to. It's going to be a pretty lonely existence if you're the last remaining treasurer or whatever. So I think it's one of these things that all the evidence is that it's highly unlikely that we'll get to a situation where it's autonomous machines without any people in intervention. It's much more likely to be co-creation. But I think there's a little bit of like getting people comfortable that they don't need to be afraid of the technology. And part of that is about being really clear about what it can and can't do and what we want it to do and don't want it to do. If we all start talking about Skynet type impressions, then it's going to be quite hard for people to get on board and be like, yeah, let's join the AI train. So I think it's finding a positive vision and showing that we can control the way that this is deployed.
Just to add on to one question that Tom asked as well in the comments section. Do you envisage building and managing your own tools or bringing AI-based solutions in from third-party vendors, and will it change between now and a year? I guess when you're starting out, it's about being creative, right? Having a playground. You don't want to just block creativity within the finance org, because it is not just a treasury thing, it is a finance point, and you want to bring this initiative in a secure, meaningful way. But at the same time, it is proprietary data that you have in your company. It could be valuable. It could also it could also add on to valuation. So when people are looking at artificial intelligence in general, you should also look at it as a CapEx feature of projects as well. This is a good, meaningful way to also bring meaningful value into it, because whether it's in treasury, whether it's in your customer base, there's a meaningful amount of data there that you can put a price tag on. And AI is supporting you to understand those behaviors to drive, in the end, return on investment and efficiency in different areas. So for sure now, depending on the AI journey of your company as a whole, and also how they're going into that space, it's definitely going to change, and it should be going in the direction, I personally believe, of that proprietary area, but very much dependent on your business model.
Good stuff.
Interesting.
James, can we talk a little bit about AI improving decision making? I know we said we don't want to entirely get rid of everyone in the treasury function. How effectively do you think AI is being integrated into decision support systems at the moment? Are there any gaps in current applications? And what are the dangers of relying on AI too heavily in that decision making capacity?
So at the moment, I think it's scratching the surface.
Yeah.
I think the vast majority of technology is being used at rules-based applications, similar to the way that a ZBA would work. If balance is this, then do that. I think where it's really interesting is that when you're running a treasury function, you have to make simplifying assumptions. We only have so much time available, there's only so many resources available, and you only want to throw so much complexity at people. And therefore, for example, if I use the simple example of depositing cash in my company, broadly speaking, you give 3 or 4 options. You kind of go sterling or dollars, banks or money market funds. Choose from those 4 pots and try and come up with a reasonable blend of security and yield. Now, is that an optimized solution? Probably not. You're only given 4 pots. And if something's happening in the money market space, for example, the chances are it will impact all 4 of those pots. Once you get onto AI-enabled capability, you can start bringing in market data. And you can kind of say, okay, well, one of the things I want you to do is just to look at my 4 pots and tell me, is that competitive?
Yeah.
Or should I be looking at something else? And if so, what is the something else? So that way you're able to kind of go, okay, right, let's just make sure that we're constantly benchmarking. And if it's that something else, like how would I, what are the steps I need to take and propose a transaction? That then means that as an individual, you're reviewing rather than, trying to be a hamster on the hamster wheel, going off and looking at data, then working out what the logistical steps are, then going off and doing the transaction, reviewing the transaction, etc. So because you're getting more support in doing transactions, it allows you to think more holistically about the art of the possible. So you're able to open up more possibilities. And again, I think that means that if you look at the range of instruments that most treasurers use, it's probably relatively limited because of that kind of overhead of A, time, and B, kind of access to data and information and complexity, etc. So I think that is an area where you can really add to your toolkit by saying, okay, well, if I can get to like the broad answer quicker, I can spend a bit longer thinking about the options and how to really maximize.
Understood. That makes sense. But there's an interesting paper I read called about falling asleep at the wheel with the human AI collaboration, and just the over reliance on AI, particularly sophisticated AI, that people then stopped using their own judgment too much. So I do see absolute benefits around that decision making, but I think there needs to be a lot of responsible use of AI as well, which is something that we will hopefully talk about a little bit later on, and we'll get onto all of the threats and opportunities around AI as well. But Patrick, I just wanted to ask you a question quickly. Do you think treasurers are actually expecting too much from AI right now, and are they forgetting about things like RPA just because AI it's been around for a while, but it's become very sexy and very shiny in Treasury? Are there other things that we should be looking at rather than AI?
Yeah, and I think the answer is yes. And don't want to be negative. I like AI a lot. It can do stuff and it has potential, but it's not the solution to your problems. I have a problem, I throw AI on it and it's going to be solved. That's an utopia and it's not going to happen. And often it's step 5, step 6, step 7, maybe step 10. And you're at step 0. You haven't done anything. So how can you go from step 0, step 1 to 5? You have to jump very far. Haha. No, you have to do step 1, 2, 3, 4 first. Step 1 is check your capabilities. Are we even able to install AI? What is going to do? How is going to solve my problems? And what does it impact in my organization? And often it impacts, what is my data? Do I have the data to feed the AI? Because the AI is not a very smart person. I think the AI capability of a ChatGPT is a 5-year-old kid or 6-year-old, depending on how trained it is. It's not the most intelligent human being on earth. It can just do databases comparisons very quickly. So if you have no databases for a very smart person, this very smart person is quite useless in your organization. Often step 1 is check the use cases, check your data availability and your data quality. In 8 out of 10 cases, that is lacking. That's what I see with my clients. Data is not optimal, is not good enough. I've even seen cases where, again, cash flow forecasting, an AI tool based on historical bank statement data was better than the cash flow forecast, the short-term one, based on the information which was in the ERP system on actual invoice data. So, what data to trust? A prediction based on the past, which isn't guaranteed for the future, disclaimer, or the existing data which we have, which should have been trusted, but isn't correct. Both is suboptimal. The combination of the two would work the best. That's what some AI tools did, some software tools. They combined both historical trends plus enrichment of ERP data. Then it suddenly worked. So AI wasn't the solution. It was like data, tools, technology. And I know you're itching, James, to respond to this. But it's often start with the easy solutions first. Data enrichment, data quality, and those are boring, I know. Data quality initiatives, data gathering initiatives, gathering data from different ERP systems. And sometimes a simple RPA, an automation tool, can save you half an hour a day. And that can be huge. That half an hour a day you can spend on other things.
Well, put James out of his misery and let
I was just going to
closer and closer to the edge of his seat. Come on, James, let's hear your view.
I was just going to say that there's one of the things that actually, again, AI can be really useful for is looking for anomalies. So actually going through and saying, well, actually, we think that the historic stuff is reasonably good in this area. The new stuff looks like it's good in these areas, but it looks like these bits are missing. So again, I don't think it's either or. I don't think it's like RPA or AI. I think you can use all of these things in combination.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a use case that I need to talk to Patrick about where RPA is going to be perfect, and that actually it's too fiddly for AI, but then AI can do the next bit. So yeah, there's lots of good examples.
Different combinations out there. Good stuff. Well, should we go on, Patrick? Did you want to say something?
No, so in short, the answer, yes, AI can help, but yes, AI is not the first answer. It's you need to be prepared to go to AI. And in all fairness, and to all listeners, more than half of you are not ready for AI immediately. And that's not critique to you. It needs good preparation. It needs investigation before you start looking at tools.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, let's move on in the interest of time. I'm sure there'll be some more questions coming in, but let's talk a little bit about the threats and the challenges around implementing AI. So we asked you in the survey what your major concerns were. Unsurprisingly, data privacy and security was really up there. So 46% saying that. The only one that was larger than that was actually a lack of understanding and training around AI. So I just want to pick up on that data privacy, data security side of things. Dominic, maybe you can kick us off on this. Based on those survey results, how seriously are Treasury professionals taking the risks posed by potential AI vulnerabilities around data privacy and security? And what kind of best practices do you think they should follow? What can you share with the audience in terms of how they can mitigate some of these risks?
Definitely. Well, I think generally, naturally, as treasurers, we're probably one of the most risk-averse people in the organization. So I think we really do treat it generally very skeptically. And as I can see as well from some of the questions asked, understanding it, what is it from a security, legal, IT perspective, it's absolutely the right way to go about it. You have to be skeptical about AI and how you introduce it. But as I said before, you should, in my previous response, you should also be encouraging and embracing this change in a meaningful way. And simple point is, anything that's out of the box in a SaaS controlled environment, meaning being in the cloud, you should be making sure it has an enterprise setup so that you're in control of the model. That data isn't being fed into a very large model where, for example, the paid version of ChatGPT is one of those, but where it's trying to improve it. And in some cases, in previous, like very, very early on, some data had been shared to other users of that subscription.
Yeah.
So you have to be understanding that there is of how these subscriptions work. So, and there are enterprise versions. So therefore, your IT team can ensure that it's in a ring-fenced location. I think then the other point was threats about AI. Eleanor, in this case, were you discussing it from as in external threats that AI pose?
Yeah, you can take it from the data privacy and security, but there are also a lot of concerns there are a lot of different concerns around the threats around AI, like AI hallucinations was a big concern. People are also worried about regulatory compliance. So take your pick, whatever you think is going to be better.
Exactly. So on the hallucinations, this is perfect. We love ideogram for creating meaningful pieces of image. If one comes out of a t-shirt on his head, we're okay with that. But in obviously in our world in finance, it has to be 100% accurate. So hallucinations are definitely something we have to be aware of, and that's where it doesn't replace us as treasurers. We're not going anywhere, and we have to be meaningful in those control items. And it's all about how we feed in data, just like how Patrick mentioned on RPAs. RPAs are very good rules-based approaches for processes, allowing you to align data, which could then potentially feed into an AI. So again, it's about being ready, understanding that data. And best case practice is if it's too complicated to think about, maybe AI will have the same question.
Yeah.
Will have the same questions you have, right?
But AI will give you an answer, maybe. I think ChatGPT is programmed to always try to give an answer. I challenged him or it in some cases, and I've gotten answers where, to be honest, it was quite BS what it said. So on the
Patrick,
complex
you
things,
will not win the US election. I'm sorry.
too
It's
bad.
true though, like AI is like a dog. It always tries to please you. It always tries to do the right thing. And I was having a funny moment with it this morning when I had a PDF of the survey results, and I put it into ChatGPT and I said, can you just extract some key data points around this? And I wanted the geographical regions of the respondents. And every single time I said, I was like, read it properly. Every single time it put 56% of respondents from the US when it was actually from Europe. And it just decided that that's where its preference was, that's where its bias was, and that's what it wanted. And yeah, really fascinating.
Interesting. See, we cannot trust it. But that's the thing. I'm really with Dominic. If it's if then maybe with some complexity, it can be used. That's more RPA, machine learning like. AI on language models, fully agree it, but in a closed setting where you feed it with the information you want it to be fed. For example, a mini LLM for your treasury policy, that's going to save a lot of time. How often I'm with clients and I'm with, what does the internal treasury policy say about this? And I'm scrolling, cannot find it, or Control F works okay-ish. If I could ask a ChatGPT, what does the treasury policy tell me about this issue, and where can I find it, on what page, provide proof? There's indeed an answer to that. Don't do it in a normal ChatGPT because it will use your proprietary data where it shouldn't be used. And in some cases, they're also concerned about the use of the output of ChatGPT. Are you even allowed to use it?
Yeah.
Now it's better. It uses more references, so you can verify yourself. But a couple of months ago, they weren't. How can you check if something is true? You don't know what you do not know. So copy pasting it. I think some lawyers did it, and it happened in some court cases.
Yeah.
Wow, right? So would you have done it without a ChatGPT? Make things up. Somebody else makes things up. You take it and send it in as your paper. Maybe not.
I shouldn't answer that as a journalist, I don't think. There might be a few creative licenses along the way, but yeah, Dom, go on.
No, but definitely on the hallucinations, it's a threat and inaccurate data.
Exactly, and that's the thing, right? And that's where having it as an internal playground is very meaningful. Simple item is, as Patrick mentioned, time consumption on documentation. You could easily, if you have enough data lying around in a data warehouse, you could easily have a chatbot added in for Treasury chatbot. You could bring this in, and everyone, instead of calling yourself or messaging you on Microsoft Teams, could be messaging the chatbot then. And if there is a hallucination, well, they always have Microsoft Teams to reach out to you on that point. And that way, you can also see how that's getting better.
Yeah, verify. And that kind of that feeds into all of the ethical side of things and the responsible use of AI. But I'm just going to point out that James has left us because he's extremely busy. But if you've got any questions for him, we will get them to him. So keep putting them in the chat, and Dominic will answer some questions, and Patrick will as well. So keep going. But I just do want to touch on that little ethical point for a moment, because there's quite a lot to think around AI, how you're using it, how you're deploying it. And anyone who knows me like I'm quite a philosophical person, so I like to look at things from various different angles. So I did actually do a course on ethical AI with the London School of Economics over the summer, just to learn a little bit around some of the considerations, some of the challenges. And it's just about using AI responsibly, and that means having all of these correct backstops in place. That's around data privacy, it's around data security, getting some kind of governance model in place. We only had about 19% of survey respondents who had a governance model at the moment. So that's something that needs to be thought about. It's accountability, it's those clear lines of responsibility. It's looking at things like data bias and thinking, if you're doing customer credit risk analysis, is the data sufficiently independent? Is there a bias in there? If you're looking at what James was saying earlier around using it for investment decisions, is the AI not prioritizing ESG when you want it to be? And it's just making sure that you're doing all of these checks behind the scenes. And then the other angle around the ethical, just to be aware of, is the job displacement. It's a really tough one. We want to automate, we want to use AI as much as possible to make the job easier, but also it does have a huge impact on the workforce. And this came out in the survey as well, with quite a few people worrying about that. There was 16% of people concerned around job displacement. So there's an awful lot to think about. It's very easy to focus on the amazing use cases, the positives, but I do think that we have to go into this quite thoughtfully as well. But Patrick, what are your views on that?
Definitely fully agree. With a site, I was looking at a quite high percentage on dependence on technology, in the high 30%. Made me laugh a little bit, because like if before AI we're not dependent on technology, if I kill the internet here in the house, I have 4 kids running after me. Dependency on technology is already here. We cannot do without tech. But AI makes us more dependent on the tech. Yes. Strikingly, a high percentage on loss of human imagination.
Yeah.
And that's a worrisome. To be honest, I'm a treasurer. I like numbers. I like logic. Yeah? 1 × 1 is 1. That's my logic. I'm not a very creative person, to speak for myself. So sometimes I ask ChatGPT things, and the solutions are like, wow, I wouldn't have come up with that. So I'm quite happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
But also I'm wondering then myself, okay, I wouldn't have come up with this. Is this still me? Should I be using this? So the ethical struggle within myself, isn't it going too fast that we're
Yeah.
okay, I'm not even going to consider thinking about this. Do I come up with a solution, or sleep a night on it? No, I'm going to ask ChatGPT, and because it can write very nicely and convincingly, I trust what it says. I'll take it for granted and I'm going to use it. I struggle with that a bit. I use it on a daily basis, to be fair, even sometimes just to correct my grammar, my spelling, or to word it in. I'm not a native English speaker, just to make it in different wording. So many use cases, but I won't ask ChatGPT the very complex things, or do my Excels.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, I just want to ask Dominic very briefly, because there was another big challenge, I mentioned it earlier, was that a lot of people felt that they didn't have the skills to be implementing AI at the moment. And it comes up a lot that people just don't feel ready for it. They don't know how to get the training, what kind of training they should be doing to upskill their teams, upskill their treasury departments, just to make sure that they're ready for a future where AI plays a lot larger role. So what would you say to them? What should they be focusing on?
I'd say the first thing is don't worry. AI is not going to take your job. That's the first thing I'd like to say as well. Look, and I think that's the most important thing to say to yourself and to your teams as well. It's simply like going from the Sony cassette Walkman to the iPod. We just got more meaningful tools, but we still need to have a driver at the wheel to actually move it, and that's what we are skilled for. And it actually allows us to be upskilled to think about new possible creative ideas, and that's how we should see AI is on that level. To your point, Eleanor, sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, just around what treasurers should be doing to upskill their team.
Certainly. So on the part of that is simple question, right? First, start with the building block. What does your team look like doing at the moment? Think about it in this meaningful way, and then understand where it can be as a process in your team. How we do it in your treasury is we start off with asking that question on that side piece, and from in this, a lot of the parts that we see inside treasury is surrounding us dealing with Microsoft Excel. You know, it's a thing that we can never get away from. It's part of us, and we came from university with it into our lives, as well as a treasury management system and an ERP system for it to come on that part. And it's about understanding how could you build from this. James mentioned on starting with tools which can bring everything in the organization together, such as meeting notes takers on one side, ways in which we can then prompt and ask questions. Meaningful way that we do it in your treasury is to understand items from a data perspective on a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet and say, how could we code that? How could we slowly start bringing and introducing coding in a meaningful way, and automation, which Patrick already mentioned in. These are the ways that you slowly are able to bring in meaningful results that drive the initiative which you began, which was trying to find a better way to do a process inside treasury. From that part on, if you slowly start out in those small building blocks, the results are very small and can bring the meaningful change for more momentum to come through. I'll take the pause there, Eleanor. Please feel free to.
You're good. You're fine.
Sounds almost philosophical.
I know. Yeah, we've become very existential. It's all good. So everyone signed up for some survey stats, but you've got an awful lot more from us already. Patrick, I'm looking at the time and thinking we maybe got a few questions that we want to have a look at.
I don't see new questions in the chat, to be honest. So I think we answered them all. But maybe this is a nice bridge to you, Eleanor. You mentioned there were some, we also asked a question, where can you use AI for, which is not the obvious one, like cash flow forecasting, fraud detection, go wild. And of course, we asked treasurers, which are risk averse. I already told you, not very creative. But I think there were some really nice use cases in there, which are overlooked, underutilized.
There were some very creative people. I'm just going to flag a few people here. Some of you definitely used an LLM to answer the questions. I could tell. That was quite interesting. There were a few little phrases left in there where people go, yes, for sure, I can give you an answer on this. So it was really interesting to see people actually using it to clarify their thoughts for these open questions on the survey. I mentioned the one about walking through the cash vaults and being able to visualize things, and there were a couple of those. There are a lot of people saying they wanted process automation beyond efficiency, which was again looking at that decision-making side of things, identifying patterns in data, helping teams to make better strategic decisions. Quite interesting theme around collaboration and innovation. So a lot of people felt that AI could actually help break down silos between departments. So better analysis and sharing of data, but also better storytelling around the data, that you can leverage the AI to say, okay, well, the person that I'm presenting to is my CFO. What are going to be the most interesting points out of this data for them? And you can build up these personas that you can then use and make sure that your storytelling is on point so that you're getting your message across. Improve risk management, and then the ethical and inclusive financial strategies. I mentioned the investing in ESG related investments, that kind of thing. So it wasn't absolutely out there. I will save a few of them for the survey report, which we will put out in the coming weeks. Don't worry, I've seen in the chat that you're all after it. It will be coming. But I think hopefully looking at this time next year, we will see a lot more creative thinking, because people will have experimented with what's going on and know a lot more about the art of the possible.
Yeah. By the way, why don't we ask the audience? We have about 40 people here. Some of the names I recognize in the participants. What are your AI use cases? Where have you used it for? Where do you think you are going to use it in the next months? Put them in the chat. Happy to hear from them. And still, if you have questions, we have 9 minutes left. This is your opportunity to quiz Eleanor, Dominic, and myself. Maybe to comment on your question. I think there was even one respondent, Eleanor, who said, in my view, AI can basically, he was saying he can do all my job, and at the end, I still want to be the final all wisdom power, and to say, yeah, this is okay, or no, I'm not okay with this, and then push it out. So
but I want to be doing it from the beach. Yeah,
exactly.
That was
Sort of.
yeah.
Sort of. I loved it. Probably the person who also put dependence on technology and do they still need my job? But I loved that one.
So there's a comment gone in the chat around Power BI for cash flow forecasting. Looking forward to working with Copilot. Yeah, there is some really interesting stuff going on with Copilot, it has to be said. I had the fortune of speaking with the Microsoft Treasury team a few months ago, and they were doing some really interesting stuff with Copilot, as you can imagine. It will be coming out in an article in TMI, so I'm still linked to TMI, but they were doing some amazing things, and they've built all of this sentiment analysis as well. So when they're looking at things like political risk, country risk, they're actually not using a lot of the major data sources that you and I would be familiar with anymore. They've got all kinds of models going on behind the scenes to look at social media sentiment. There's some really, really exciting stuff going on. There's some more down-to-earth things going on as well. But yeah, there's lots of potential with Copilot and AI. There's a couple of other questions coming. Sorry, Dominic.
There was one question I saw on using AI in portfolio asset liability management allocation. Simple question. A simple answer there is yes. It's just about how far up in the data. You won't be getting any great advantages up at macro level when you're actually doing the asset allocation strategy on that side, but it's understanding the buckets of behavior that are occurring in your customer level and liability level that's where the true data lies, going into items such as credit risk, duration components there. That's when you can start playing around with those meaningful variables and then look at improving it.
Yeah. Interesting comment from Ignacio that Moody's does not expect to use AI in their credit scoring yet. Which I think is a good way. There was a question which was sent in, pre-sent in the registration. It was about the battle between AI, co-pilots, the language models, which are going bigger, the TMSs, and how we're going to see integration in those. Will we see TMS plus AI, or will AI replace a TMS? I don't have the answer. Dominic, I'd love to hear your vision. You're quite techie. Where do you see it in 5 years? Do we still have TMSs with strong AI capabilities, or can we just use AI?
It's a very good question. To open it up, there is a need for a treasury management system for a lot of different things. They do a lot of items which a bank or your own independent systems will never be able to manage from a maintenance and service perspective. However, there is a good amount of saturation in the market because we all have different industries with different business models, and we have to understand the different use cases in the dynamic environment. And that's where we can be, as treasurers, members of 1 to 2 implementations of the treasury management system, depending on how long in the organization, if things change. AI, if you're supporting it through different use cases and items, like for example, we saw Power BI and cash flow forecasting. Data warehouses have the ability to do forecasting and manipulation. There are situations where having good connections to your banks via API connections, as was a buzzword, but is now been slowly starting to make big progress. If you're having the right connections into your business model, then yes, there could be no use case for actually having a treasury management system in that side. And in fact, you could get better results depending on the scenario as well. I think it will, like Patrick, only time will tell to be to be on that side.
You made some interesting comments, Dominic, in the recent TMI articles. Are the days of the TMS finally numbered? So if anyone hasn't read that, head over to the TMI website, because that was quite a good discussion around where TMSs are heading. And then you gave some awesome comments around the AI side of that there. There was another comment from Ignacio just asking about what the banks are doing for corporates. I'm just going to plug my Eurofinance panel. So I've got 5 banks. We're talking about AI. We will be talking all about that. So it's on the Thursday. If you're at Eurofinance, it's at 14:40. So yeah, come and have a look. But I will feed back to everyone as well. I'll do a LinkedIn post about it.
Yep, no, definitely. We have 3 more minutes left. I don't see audience questions. Do I? No.
I think we covered most of them, but we can wrap up with a few final thoughts, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe it's always so difficult to pick one thing, but if you had to pick one aspect of Treasury that you feel is most AI ready right now, what would it be and why? So John, we'll come to you first.
AI ready and why? The story, the visualization. I think this is something that, we have the data, we have the ability of producing items. AI is very much ready to improve us telling the story to the different stakeholders. We set the benchmark too low down.
Patrick, do you agree?
Yes, partly. I think the biggest use cases are in small step automations, data gathering, data aggregation, not data analysis. Too difficult still. Need human brains for that. But definitely in language models. Searching through big loan documents, where do I find my information? If I can save half an hour a day by doing that, automation, RPA, and quicker information gathering, I have a huge gain already. And I don't have to spend millions on a big AI tool who does my complete data analysis. Start with that and build it from there. I think that makes sense. And I'm not going to say that the usual, we already have machine learning and cash flow forecasting. Is that even an AI? Yes, it's an AI. So we had that for 5 years already. But in the end, they will come together in 5 to 10 years. We have it all in one package and not as separate tools. We don't talking RPA, machine learning, and data aggregation or data lakes anymore. No, it's in one big tool who can does it all. And then that's where the magic happens, probably. We still need the brains of the treasurers who do the critical thinking. Is this what I really want to do? The bucket story from James. If I limit it to 4 buckets, I'm never going to know what happened in bucket 5 to 6 to 7. But do I really want to go there? You do not know what you do not know. So baby steps forward, and that's also progress. Consistency is key. I think let's end with a quote I heard a couple of weeks ago. Data is a new corporate asset. Was it that one?
Yeah.
It all starts with data, and without the data, your AI is going to be useless. Look at your data. Data is your new corporate gold. It might be even needed on your balance sheet. And then it's a nice way to expand your balance sheet, but that's now it becomes too technical treasury.
Awesome stuff. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for the discussion. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. You've been amazing. And again, thank you from me for participating in the survey, because it really does mean a lot. It was the first big project outside of TMI. Wasn't sure how it was going to go, and your support is always massively appreciated. And we'll no doubt do many more sessions like this, Patrick.
Definitely. This was the first Treasury Masterminds webinar. In my opinion, a huge success. First of many to come on very interesting topics. I love the audience participation. I think we should do even more with it next time. Make it as interactive as possible. We're not here to talk amongst each other. We do it for all the treasurers out there. Knowledge sharing is the goal of Treasury Masterminds. Let's do more of these cool webinars. So thanks all for joining. Great session. Thanks, Eleanor. Thanks, Dominic. Thanks, James. And yeah, we'll share the survey results soon. And yeah, keep checking out Treasury Masterminds.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.